Hi folks, a quick disclaimer. The material in this video series is meant to be a resource for a provider and his or her client who is challenged by substance abuse, anger management, and or aggression. Those who wish to learn more about treating anger and aggression may also find this resource useful. The video series is not meant to be a do-it-yourself treatment approach. Seek help if you are challenged with any physical, mental, and or behavioral health problem. And like always, call 911 and or go to the nearest emergency department if you are having thoughts of self-harm or thoughts to harm someone else. Let's get started. Let's begin by addressing the question, is anger a serious problem? 1 in 5 people say they have ended a relationship or a friendship with someone because of their anger. That should answer that question. If your anger has caused problems in 1 or more relationships, you may find this video useful. Let's take a moment to go over what we will be covering in this session. I'll go over the purpose and overview of this 12-session curriculum. I'll talk about the problem of anger, going over some operational definitions. Then I'll discuss when does anger become a problem. I'll discuss the payoffs and consequences of anger and commonly believed myths concerning anger. I'll present on anger as a habitual response and breaking the anger habit. We'll quickly go over the anger meter and we'll finish up with going over the homework. Yes, there will be a small amount of homework. It will be easy, nothing too difficult. The purpose of this anger management program is to 1, teach you techniques to learn how to manage anger better. 2, teach strategies to prevent and or stop violence or the threat of violence. And 3, teach self-control strategies over thoughts and actions. And 4, lastly, to receive support and feedback regarding anger management. Let's go over the problem of anger and some operational definition. For starters, anger is a feeling, an emotion. It can range from mild irritation to intense fury and rage. Anger can be a response to those situations where we feel threatened. We believe harm will come to us, or we believe that another person has unnecessarily wronged us. We may also respond with anger when a family member, a friend, a child is threatened or harmed. Anger may result from frustration when our needs, desires, or goals are not being met. They may lead us to become impatient, impulsive, aggressive, and violent. People often confuse anger with aggression. Let's talk about the differences. Aggression is a behavior that's intended to cause harm to another person or damage property. This behavior may involve verbal abuse, threats, or violent acts. Anger, on the other hand, is an emotion and does not necessarily lead to aggression. Therefore, a person can become angry without acting aggressively. Let's talk about hostility, a word often associated with anger. It refers to attitudes and judgments that motivate aggressive behavior. So for clarity, anger is an emotion, aggression is a behavior, and hostility is more of an attitude that involves disliking others and evaluating them negatively. In this group, you will learn helpful strategies and techniques to manage anger, express anger more appropriately, challenge hostile attitudes, and prevent aggressive acts such as verbal abuse and violence. Let's talk about when does anger become a problem. In the simplest terms, anger becomes a problem when, 1, it's felt too intensely, two, too frequently, and three, when it is expressed inappropriately. Anger can become a problem for individuals who are easily angered, repeatedly become angry, and or remain angry for long periods of time. This may result in physical health problems that may include high blood pressure, heart disease, headaches, muscle tension, and a decrease in immune system functioning. Consequently, people challenged by difficulties with anger are at a higher risk of having a heart attack, a stroke, and are becoming sick because of a weakened immune system. There is also quite a bit of research that has shown the bidirectional relationship between anger and substance abuse. For example, for those with a history of substance use, anger can trigger alcohol and drug use. This can include the use of tobacco, cannabis, stimulants, anxiolytics like Valium, and opiates like pain pills, and vice versa. Intoxication, alcohol and drug cravings, and substance withdrawal can elevate feelings of restlessness, irritability, and anger. Some negative consequences of anger include verbal and physical aggression, including violence that can result in physical injury, employment termination, hospitalizations, police involvement, child protective services involvement, and imprisonment. And of course, we hear about the news that some extremely angry individual ran their car into a crowd of people. Someone stabbed someone, assaulted, or killed their spouse, or was involved in one of many different types of mass shootings. Fortunately, anger does not usually involve violence or result in someone's death, like I just described. Instead, inappropriate expressions of anger usually involve verbal abuse, intimidating, and or threatening behaviors that result in the development of fear, resentment, and distrust of the angry individual that may result in alienation from the family members, friends, and co-workers. Payoffs and consequences. The inappropriate expression of anger initially has many apparent payoffs. One type of payoff is to get something one wants or to alter someone else's behavior with the use of intimidation and aggression. This may involve verbal threats and violence. For some people who explode verbally, so to speak, may feel some degree of relief afterwards. However, everyone around them may feel worse. Let me give you a scenario of payoffs and consequences. Imagine a little boy. Let's call him Kevin. He's 10 years old. And every day for the past week, a kid, let's call him Bill, took his lunch money. Bill is very threatening. So Kevin gives his lunch money to Bill, the bully. Bill tells Kevin not to say anything, otherwise he will bust Kevin up. Kevin is scared, embarrassed, and fearful, so he doesn't tell anyone. As a result of being bullied at school, he can't concentrate in school, he has difficulty sleeping. As a result, Kevin is very angry with his problem. Kevin tries to avoid Bill, but he always finds Kevin. On one occasion, Kevin told Bill that he doesn't have any money, but Bill just grabbed Kevin, went into his pocket and took his money, and then hit him for lying. Kevin cried when no one was looking. Sometimes Kevin would tell his mother that he was too sick, so he wouldn't have to go to school and be confronted by Bill. Kevin often thought about being bullied. It would go over and over in his mind. And the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. One day he went to school and Bill approached him for money. Kevin yelled, "No!" Bill just grabbed him, tore Kevin's shirt, but this time Kevin socked Bill in the face 2, 3, 4 times until he was pulled off of Bill by the teacher. Both Kevin and Bill were suspended from school, but Bill never bullied Kevin for lunch money again. This example may be a little controversial, but nevertheless, take a moment. Think about the payoffs and consequences of Kevin's actions. Was Kevin in the right? Could Kevin have handled this situation differently? What are the pros and cons of Kevin's behavior? Remember this scenario. We're going to talk about this and other types of scenarios throughout this video. Now, let's talk about myths associated with anger. It's information that's thought to be true but turns out to be false, like the world is flat. What are some of the myths about anger? Myth number 1, anger is inherited. One misconception or myth is that anger is inherited and can't be changed. You may even hear from someone, "I inherited it from my father. That's just the way I am." This statement implies that anger and behaviors associated with anger are fixed and unchangeable. However, research has identified that anger and troublesome behaviors associated with anger are learned, which means that they can be unlearned. And more appropriate expressions of anger can also be learned. Some of the behaviors we learn are modeled by people in our life. Through observation, we learn certain types of behaviors from people who include our parents, family members, and friends. A child or an adolescent may learn through observation that if you raise your voice and become aggressive, people will fear you, and he or she may be more likely to get what they want. Myth number 2, anger automatically leads to aggression. It is commonly thought that anger builds like a teapot to the point that it has to be let out forcefully, resulting in an aggressive outburst. As we will see throughout these video sessions, anger does not have to lead to aggression. Effective anger management involves controlling the escalation of anger by learning assertiveness skills, changing negative and hostile self-talk, challenging irrational beliefs, and employing a variety of behavioral strategies. I'll go over these skills, techniques, and strategies in later sessions. Myth number 3, people must be aggressive to get what they want. Many people confuse assertiveness with aggression. The goal of aggression is to dominate, intimidate, harm, or injure another person, to win at any cost. Conversely, the goal of assertiveness is to express one's feelings in a way that is respectful of others, but yet clearly demonstrates your position. We will be covering assertiveness in more detail as we go along. Myth number 4, venting anger is always desirable. For many years, one belief was expressing anger in expressive ways that include screaming or beating a pillow was a healthy release. However, it has been found that this type of behavior is not therapeutic and instead reinforces aggressive behavior. Anger as a habitual response. Not only is the expression of anger learned, but it can become a routine familiar, and a predictable response to a variety of situations. When anger is displayed frequently and aggressively, it can become a bad habit. As you know, habits are behaviors that are performed over and over again without much thought behind it. In this case, this type of aggression becomes a tool for problem solving. And when the only tool you have in your toolbox is a hammer, everything is going to look like a nail. Do you remember that scenario with Kevin and Bill the bully? Well, it's a year later, and Kevin is now 11 years old. There was this kid, let's call him Harold, who started taking Kevin's homework assignment. He would erase Kevin's name, then put his own name on Kevin's homework assignment and turn it in. Because Kevin failed to turn in his homework assignment on a number of occasions because his kid was taking it from him, he was sent to detention center after school. And what made matters even worse was when he got home, he got in trouble with his parents for not turning in his homework assignment. On one day during PE, Kevin was playing kickball, and Harold jumped in front of Kevin and took his turn. All of the other kids laughed at Kevin. Kevin was so angry and embarrassed at Harold, he pushed Harold to the ground and then began hitting him multiple times in the face. The teachers had to pull Kevin off of Harold. Both kids were suspended. Like before, Kevin got into big trouble with his parents. What are your thoughts? Is there a potential for Kevin to use anger coupled with aggression as a habitual response? Breaking the anger habit. Let's talk about becoming aware of anger. To break the anger habit, you must first develop an awareness of the events, circumstances, and behaviors of others that trigger your anger. It's also critical to identify the negative consequences that result from anger and how it escalates. In addition to becoming aware of anger, you need to develop strategies to effectively manage it. It is important to stop the escalation of anger before you lose control and experience negative consequences. Effective strategies for controlling anger should include both immediate and preventative strategies. The goal of preventative strategies is to prevent anger-provoking situations from possibly developing. For example, let's say you get into fights when you drink, or you often get into fist fights with your brother about contributions within the family. A preventative strategy would be to, 1, not drink, and 2, avoid your brother. Maybe ignore him when he criticizes you. Immediate strategies include taking a time out, thought stopping, and changing irrational beliefs if it is contributing to your anger. Also, to de-escalate, you can use deep breathing techniques and exercise. We'll spend a session going over these healthy types of interventions. Thanks for hanging in there. That's good. We're almost finished for today. It will just take a couple of minutes for me to go over the anger meter, and we'll close by discussing the homework. The anger meter. Like with any challenge, it's important that you are able to connect the dots. In terms of anger, it is important to not only know how anger affects others, but also how it affects you. You'll find that using the anger meter will be a useful tool to help you monitor your anger by identifying how your anger escalates. Take a look. A 0 on the anger meter represents a complete lack of anger or total state of calm, whereas a 10 represents being very angry, where it becomes explosive and there is a loss of control that leads to negative consequences. You know what I'm talking about. Points between 1 and 10 represent feelings and or behaviors associated with anger. The purpose of the anger meter is to monitor the escalation of anger as it moves up the scale so that you can learn to catch yourself. For example, when a person encounters an anger-provoking event, he or she does not reach a 10 immediately, although it may sometimes feel that way. In reality, the individual's anger starts at a low number and then moves up the scale. There is always time, provided one has learned effective coping skills to stop anger from escalating to a 10. Throughout these video sessions, we will be going over the anger meter and talking about preventing and intervening to avoid the escalation of anger. The homework will be the same throughout all of the sessions. 1, review what we've covered in the session presentation. You may want to watch the video more than once. 2, monitor your anger over the upcoming week until your next session using the anger meter, so that when you check in your next session, you can discuss an anger-provoking event and be prepared to indicate the highest number you achieved on the anger meter. Congratulations, you completed session 1. High five, high five. Good job. I hope this session was helpful. Subscribe to the channel so that you can have access to all the videos and the worksheets I created for each video session. Take care and see you in session 2.